of the construction industry to maintain residential and commercial buildings. We're a not-for-profit organization with over 58,000 members. Again, I said we were a membership-based organization. Those members that we have, I'll go into the membership in just a minute, I'm sorry. Over 350 chapters nationwide. So we have chapters that are set up of our membership. One of those chapters would be the Code Officials Association of Arkansas, which is an Arkansas state chapter of building officials and building inspectors and folks like that. We also have chapters that include fire officials. There'd be a fire chapter, a plumbing and mechanical fuel gas chapters, professional chapters. You may have a group of architects and engineers that become a professional chapter that become part of ICC. And the purpose of our chapters is to be able to provide education to those groups in order to use the codes that are adopted throughout the country. The International Code Council develops 15 model codes. And what I mean by model codes, if you're familiar with a lot of cities and a lot of organizations produce what's called, say, model ordinances. And so that way, each city is not reinventing the wheel for everything that they're doing. They'll take a model ordinance that's used all over the country and take that model ordinance and maybe change it, make amendments to it so that it fits the needs of their particular jurisdiction. Well, that's a lot what model codes are. Model codes are designed so that city officials don't have to sit down and work out stair geometry about how stairs should be built. They're built, it's in the code, and each jurisdiction won't have to do that over and over again. So, I mean, that's just an example. You go to plumbing. Each jurisdiction would not have to figure out how to install a proper sanitary drainage system in a building. It's laid out in the codes, and that's what the intent of the model codes are. And again, you're going to hear this over and over again, and you heard it a little bit earlier, a minute ago, is that this is all about the health, safety, and welfare by creating better buildings and safer communities. It's to protect people, which for the city of Jonesboro's number one intent, I believe, is the welfare and protection of its citizens. The International Code Council, we're dedicated to provide the highest, and we do provide the highest quality codes that are available in the United States. We also provide products and services. Again, we are a company. We're a not-for-profit, but we are a company. We provide products and services for all who is concerned with safety and performance of the built environment. Talk to you a little bit about ICC Code Adoptions, just so you get an idea of what we do. Again, I said we produce 15 codes and 8 standards. I'm not going to go over every code, but the International Building Code, which covers commercial buildings, is adopted in all 50 states in the United States. The International Fire Code is adopted and used in 45 states. The IRC is in use in 48 states. I'm not going to read off every one. But the International Property Maintenance Code, which is what we're here to talk about today, it's in use in 40 states in the District of Columbia right now today. And again, that's based on the data that people have given to us. There may be jurisdictions in those other 10 states that I don't have listed that could be using an International Property Maintenance Code, and we would never know it. So there's I-codes that are adopted here in Arkansas, and some of those I-codes that are adopted, and when I say I-codes, just short for international, so I'm not repeating that, just keep it short, include the state of Arkansas and the Arkansas State Fire Code, that and that code is used when a local jurisdiction like Jonesboro adopts these certain codes, they have to use the Arkansas State Fire Code. The Arkansas State Fire Code includes the International Building Code, the International Fire Code, and the International Residential Code. Then you also, by the Department of Health and Hospitals, they adopt the International Fuel Gas Code, Mechanical Code, and Plumbing Code. Then other jurisdictions also adopt the International Existing Building Code, which is just a method when you are doing construction on an existing building that gives designers that are having to work on that building alternate methods to meet the code, instead of having to take an existing structure and meet the exact requirements for a new building. The existing building code gives them alternatives that are easier for them to comply with the true meaning of the code. And then also, the International Property Maintenance Code is adopted in Arkansas by local jurisdictions. To name a few that we're aware of is Russellville, Osceola, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly or not, Lowell, Fort Smith, Bryant, Bentonville, Little Rock, and North Little Rock. Those are the ones that we're aware of. And then also the National Electrical Code, which is created by the National Fire Protection Association, but the ICC does not have an electrical code, and we will not. We use the National Fire Protection NEC, and that's the most common electrical code. I mean, it's the only electrical code used in the United States. So the international codes, or I codes, are developed in the United States by building safety and fire prevention officials, and then any other stakeholders that are in the industry: safety and fire, architects, engineers, builders, home builders, plumbing contractors, mechanical contractors. I mean, I could go on and on. People that are interested in energy conservation. I could, the stakeholder list is quite wide, quite large. The codes are published by the International Code Council, and the International Code Council is the legal successor to the Council of American Building Officials. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So if you can see in this, I don't know if you can see past me or not, but the International Code Council was created from 3 model code organizations. Back prior to 1994, there were 3 model code organizations across the United States. In the Northeast, there was BOCA. It was Building Officials and Code Administrators International. BOCA was founded in 1915. On the West Coast region, it was the International Conference of Building Officials. They were founded in 1922, and then Southern Building Code Congress International was founded in 1940. Historically, Arkansas and Arkansas jurisdictions have used the standard building codes in the past before ICC was created. In 1994, the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, and other organizations, other building stakeholders, AGC, Home Builders Association, all these different groups, came to these 3 model code organizations and said, look, we're building buildings right now across the country, and we're having to build to 3 different codes. So when we design a building, we're building the same building, we're having to make 3 different designs based on 3 different codes that are completely different. Not just geological differences or climate differences, but just different because the code's built differently. Can y'all get together and create one code so we're not doing this? So in 1994, at that meeting, the decision was made that those 3 model code organizations would become one organization. And that's when they decided to create the International Code Council. A lot of people talk about what's up with this international. Why do you have international in the name? I got this after the last meeting, so I want to talk about that a little bit. If you notice, when I discussed the 3 predecessor organizations, each one of them had international in their name. The reason it's there is because we want to do business internationally. We're an American company. Our offices are in Birmingham, Alabama, Chicago, Illinois, Brea, California, and we now have an office in Washington, D.C. We don't have offices outside the United States. We're here. But we're international in order to do business internationally. Our codes are adopted outside the United States, mainly in the United States territories. Some other countries have been looking at our codes. Some have modeled codes from our codes. So I just want to give you a little history about who we are and where the ICC came from. So what is a building code? It's the minimum acceptable standard, the minimum that is used to regulate the design and construction or maintenance of buildings for the purpose of protecting the health, safety, and welfare. You're going to hear health, safety, and welfare over and over in this, because that's what we're talking about. That's what the goal is here, is to protect people, and that is what the city of Jonesboro is here to do, is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens. Again, this is a model building code. It's designed for local governments that they choose to adopt the building codes or the property maintenance code or any of the codes. If they make that choice and want to adopt them, then they can adopt them and amend them any way that they choose to amend them. It's just making the work easier so that they don't have to go through what I said before about figuring out stair geometry or plumbing requirements or mechanical requirements or how to build a building structurally that it's going to withstand an earthquake, the minimal requirements of those things. So this is a diagram of our code development process, and I'm going to go through it kind of quick, and if you have any questions after the whole presentation, I'd be glad to answer you about those. In essence, we develop codes every 3 years. So right now we've had the 2015 and we're 2015 edition of the codes, and we're going to be moving to the 2018 codes soon. Some of the Arkansas fire codes are based on the 2012 codes, and I figure that probably the 2018s they'll probably update to the 2018 codes. I'm imagining, I don't know that for a fact, but I think the fire codes will probably move forward after another cycle. So when we develop codes, code changes are submitted, and anybody can submit code change proposals. You don't have to be an ICC member. You don't have to, anyone can walk in. The hearings are free. The code changes can be submitted by anyone. So once they're submitted, the code changes are compiled and distributed. They're available on our website for anybody to download, anybody at all. Then we hold an open public hearing, and at that open public hearing, there is committees assigned from our membership that serve on those committees that many of them are experts in the field for those specific committees. So those committees hear the code change proposals and then vote on those code change proposals. When we're up or down or amended, there's many outcomes from that deliberation. And in the audience is any of the ICC members that can be there, and those members could be building officials, fire officials, architects, engineers, home builders, the general public. It doesn't matter. It could be anybody. And then that body can either uphold what that committee has done or can go against what that committee's done. So after that open public hearing, those public hearing results from those code change proposals is also compiled again, and then it's put out for anyone to make a public comment about those code change proposals. Anybody can make a comment. It doesn't have to be an ICC member. And once those public comments are sought, they're compiled and distributed again to everyone, and they're posted on our website. And then there's what's called a final action hearing. And at that final action hearing, if there's been no public comments to some code changes, those will go through on a consent agenda, much like what city government does. But the ones that have had either a public comment or was overturned in that first, the committee said they passed it, and then the group, the body that was there overturned that decision, then it would be heard again in the final action hearing. And at that time, at the final action hearing, our governmental consensus members, that would be building inspectors, fire inspectors, because they don't have a monetary stake in the decision. Their stake is about protecting the public. They will take the final action on those debatable issues, and then from the results of that, a new edition would be published. And again, that's every 3 years we produce a new set of codes. So again, you're going to hear it over and over again. Why adopt building codes? Again, to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. Building codes provide protection from tragedy caused by fire, structural collapse, and general deterioration in homes, schools, stores, and manufacturing facilities, all occupancies for that matter. Safe buildings are achieved through proper design and construction practices and a code administration program that ensures compliance, much like the code compliance program that you have here existing right now for building codes and for property maintenance. Excuse me. Home and business owners have a substantial investment that is protected through complete code administration. And I think you can see that every day with new construction in particular, because it sets out, again, there are minimum requirements. You can always build higher than the code or better than the code, but the basic code requirements are bare minimums, and it helps with the substantial investment that everybody makes when they're building their home or their businesses. Codes contribute to the well-being of the community, but basically through the preservation of life and safety, as well as the maintenance of property values over time, which is what I was discussing just now. And those things are a direct result of the application and enforcement of model building codes. That pretty much closes my presentation. Cindy is going to talk to you now about the International Property Maintenance Code, which is what we're really here about today. Come on. Sorry. I apologize. We're having a bit on our end a technical issue. It's not giving you the other slide, the note slides. It's just
okay.
You're okay with that?
That's fine. Good evening. I know I don't think Mayor Perrin is here, but I would like to thank him for having us here, and city staff and the citizens of Jonesboro. I'm the regional manager for the International Code Council for Arkansas, Texas, and Oklahoma. And in that capacity, I'm ICC, the International Code Council's liaison to jurisdictions and ICC chapters. And one responsibility I have is to help jurisdictions with code adoptions. Excuse me. We're going to look at the 2012 International Property Maintenance Code Fundamentals. This PowerPoint is actually a 6-hour PowerPoint that we've condensed down, and the actual code consists of 8 chapters. Excuse me. And we're going to look at chapters 1, 2, and 3. And chapter 1 is basically the same in all of the 15 codes in the family of international codes. The way this particular code is organized, Chapter 1 is going to address administration, Chapter 2, definitions, and Chapter 3, general requirements. We're not going to go through Chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7, but they're very important chapters that give detailed information on how a jurisdiction can enforce these requirements.
Excuse me, it didn't change slides behind you.
It didn't?
I'm sorry, folks. Just a minute. I'm having to reload it. I apologize for this. Let's try this one more time.
Okay.
Okay, now it's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay. Again, this is the general organization of this particular code. Chapter 1 deals with administration, 2, definitions, 3, general requirements. And we were not going to make it to 4, 5, 6, and 7, although they're very important parts of this code. They're the ones that really give the code officials and the city the meat. Chapter 1, administration. It deals with the effective application of the property maintenance code and helps to maintain property values, deter crime, and encourage community viability. The purpose of inspecting structures is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And again, the intent of this code is to ensure public health, safety, and welfare. The adoption and enforcement of the International Property Maintenance Code will help provide proper maintenance of buildings to protect against fire hazards, provide a safe and unobstructed means of egress. In other words, that's to get out of a building in an emergency situation. The prevention of potential structural problems, building deterioration, and unsafe conditions. Keep clean and sanitary buildings, and to provide a suitable environment for the public to live, visit, work, and conduct business. Structures that do not comply with the provisions shall be altered, repaired, to provide a minimum level of health and safety. The consequences of not performing or inadequately performing an inspection could result in deterioration of the built environment, improper maintenance, a decrease in property value, health hazards, and a delay in emergency egress. The scope applies to all structures, residential and non-residential. It lays out the details of administration, enforcement, and penalties, occupancy limitations, and it provides minimum maintenance standards for the city. It determines responsibility for code compliance. And I believe Jonesboro has amended that slightly.
Right. Yeah, we one of the things that we did was the section on occupancy limits. We eliminated that part from our code, so it's not there.
Okay. And again, I know I may be belaboring this, but the intent of this code is really to ensure the health and safety and welfare of occupants and owners. Maintenance is important in any structure, and it's required on all systems and devices. Repairs, alterations, additions, and changes of occupancy shall comply with the International Building Code, the International Fuel Gas Code, the International Mechanical Code, and the Electrical Code, National Electrical Code. That's not an international code, as Mark explained. Workmanship is important, and it shall be executed in a skilled manner, and it's subject to the code official's approval. Historic buildings that are designated, if you have a local or a regional or state historic register, those particular buildings may deviate from the strict application of the code, but the building must substantially comply with the spirit and the intent of the code. Right of entry is a section in the code, but that has been amended by the City of Jonesboro, and I'll let Lieutenant, if you want to speak about that.
Sure. Just briefly, the right of entry for the International Property Maintenance Code, the International Building Code, all those are the same. However, when we adopted it in Jonesboro, we added a couple different provisions. One was a provision that said if the property is not owner occupied, so it's a rental unit, that before a code official can come in, they have to notify the landlord and give them the opportunity to be present, and then as well as requiring that the permission to enter be written. And we have, I can show you this, we have the permission to search form in that. But by the way, this is available on our website, jonesboro.org, that you can look at.
And as he said, the code official is required to carry proper identification and issue all necessary notices and orders. The code official keeps official records in the department, and those records should be maintained as long as the building or structure is in existence or is otherwise provided in regulations. The code official may grant modifications to the code upon application from the owner in order to allow improvements and maintenance of existing structures. Modification must be in compliance with the intent and purpose of the code. For instance, used materials and equipment can be approved by the code official whenever the used materials are in good repair or have been reconditioned, they have been tested when necessary, and are in proper working condition. The code official shall issue a notice of violation once it is determined that a violation exists. The code official shall serve a notice of violation or order per section 107 of the IPMC. Any action taken on the premises by the jurisdiction shall be charged against the real estate as a lien in accordance with section 107. The abatement of the violation, regardless of the imposition of penalties, the jurisdiction may institute action to correct all or part of a violation. And I believe that the city may have, did you amend this area about the notices of violation?
No.
Okay.
I can understand that. Go back one slide.
Yes.
Say it again.
Regardless of the imposition of penalties, and this is straight from section 106.5, the jurisdiction may institute action to correct all or part of the violation. So it may be that they only want a partial part of the entire violation corrected at the time. Yes.
What that may be, and you have a little different thing for the condemnation of buildings here in Jonesboro, so the code's been amended. But that could be a situation where you have a structure that is condemned because it can't be repaired, nobody's going to repair it, and it needs to be raised. So the city may end up having to actually do that, and they're just saying that no matter what the penalties, no matter what, the city can go ahead and do that.
With the notice of an order, a form is required to be in writing, clearly identify the property by address or legal description, state why the notice is being issued, and identify the code violation. Include a correction order allowing reasonable time to make the repairs, inform the owner of his or her right to an appeal, and include a statement of the right to file a lien in accordance with section 106.3. This is an example of a notice of violation. The property address is cited. It is endorsed to the owner, or Mr. Fix-It in this case. And the notice says that in accordance with the 2012 International Property Maintenance Code, so it tells you which code we're talking about. And then it cites the section 302.1, sanitation, and the section that's in violation. And then the remedy is to remove all trash and rubbish from the rear yard. And then there's a second violation, so the section is cited, 304.2. And I think it says protective treatment. And this is for the paint, I believe. I can't see, it's tiny on my screen, but you may be able to read it. And so the remedy is to eliminate all peeling paint on garage and replace with a protective treatment. Then it provides a time frame in which to have this protective or this abatement take place. And also a paragraph that the owner may appeal. So this is a typical method of service violation.
Could I just point something out real quick? That's in this sample, but it doesn't apply here. At the bottom of this, and I don't know if you can read it, it says that this appeal must be filed under appropriate authority in writing and with a filing fee of $100. One of the things that we did here is we eliminated any fees associated with the code. So there is no fee for appealing a violation.
Next, the method of service. How are these violations served? They shall be hand-delivered to the person in violation. If there's no one home, or maybe the property, no one's been there for a while. Certified or first-class mail must be sent to the last known property owner that you have on record. And if that mail is returned, then a notice will be posted in a conspicuous place. Signs, tags, permits, correction notices, and stop work orders that are posted by the code official are not to be tampered with or removed. With transfer of ownership, a transfer of property with violations cannot take place unless the new owner agrees to accept responsibility for the violations. And I believe you have a process in place for that to happen in Jonesboro. Unsafe structures and equipment, and this section has been deleted and amended by the City of Jonesboro, and I'll let the Lieutenant speak about that.
Right. In the International Property Maintenance Code, it addresses things that we address now in the condemnation process. So with Section 107 or 108, the only two sections that we kept was closing of vacant structures and the authority to disconnect service to utilities in the case of an emergency.
So this is one section that is currently in the code, and the sections that you see highlighted in red are those that have been amended here locally. Any of the following can contribute to an unsafe structure: lack of fire safeguards, unsafe equipment, damage or dilapidation, or danger of collapse. And although you see that these have been deleted, it doesn't mean that they're not included in your city. They're just in a separate document. Unsafe equipment that is hazardous or in disrepair, such as boiler equipment, elevators, moving stairways, electric wiring or devices, flammable liquid containers. Some structures are unfit for human occupancy, and some of that criteria could be unsanitary conditions, severe dilapidation or disrepair, infestation or contamination, lack of ventilation or illumination, lack of sanitary or heating facilities or other essential equipment, endangerment due to the location of the structure. Many cities still adopt these intact. Unlawful structures can be those that are overcrowded, erected unlawfully, or occupied unlawfully. The code sets forth occupancy classifications for structures. So for instance, if there's a storage building out behind a house and someone's living in it, it's occupied unlawfully.
That long list was in unsafe structures and equipment, and we use our condemnation process. So to do that, it's been in place for years. So it was redundant to have it in here, and there were some things in the international code that we don't do or we do differently here, and we didn't want the confusion.
Okay. And the same with this, and Jonesboro does have criteria for what they consider dangerous structures on premises. Dangerous structure on premises could be inadequate means of egress under the adopted building, maybe under the adopted building code, damage by natural disasters such as hurricane and earthquake, inadequate light, ventilation, mechanical and plumbing systems, and an abandoned structure. The code official is authorized to order a vacant structure closed, and by that, I'll let the lieutenant speak about that and what
We kept it.
you do here. You did, okay. The code official can authorize the disconnection of utility services of a structure under these conditions in the case of an emergency where there's a hazard to life or property, and those are typically rare, when the utility connection has been made without approval or illegally. However, notice shall be given to the utility and, when possible, to the owner and occupant of the structure prior to disconnection. Placarding. The code official must post the condemned structure or equipment with the notice and properly serve the owner or responsible party. Placarding, the placard should include a statement of the penalties, and I believe that's what you do. Prohibited occupancy or structures condemned and placarded by the code official that must be vacated.
And again, we did away with that section, as well as we don't have the occupancy limits. So.
Abatement methods. This allows, I think that's wrong, for various methods of abatement of unsafe conditions by repair, rehab, or other approved corrective action. The code official shall cause a report to be filed of an unsafe condition, stating the occupancy of the structure and the nature of the unsafe condition. Emergency measures and imminent danger. This has been amended locally. Typically, the code official is required to take emergency measures when the occupant is in danger and could be harmed. And yeah, it's not always an easy decision.
We have our existing condemnation process deals with an emergency condemnation. So it was not needed for us to keep that section here.
Okay. And it's probably redundant because typically there are temporary safeguards that take place when emergency repairs need to be made. Emergency repairs must be completed immediately. A person ordered to take emergency measures may appeal the action. And demolition, yes.
It's most of concern to me, and I know, as you interrupted just a minute, I thought maybe I could too. The thing that concerns me is whether that tenant is still in the house when these things are going on.
Okay, we'll answer that, hold that, because we're going to try to get through the rest of Cindy's presentation, and then we're going to open it up for at least 35, 40 minutes of Q&A. So if you'll keep that in mind.
I thought we were here to understand what the
Yeah, I guess, what's your...
what the code was. I thought that's what we were here for.
Absolutely.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
Okay.
As to whether or not a tenant stays in the house after the condemnation has taken place, or they come in, someone comes in with a safety violation.
Well, we have a condemnation process in Jonesboro that's
Does that
been...
process include the tenant staying in the house or not? The person who's living in the house?
Well, the chief building official right now, again, before we ever took this process on, he has the ability to close a structure.
I'm just asking for a straight question, answer to the question, which is there going to be somebody in the house when critical repairs are being made?
I mean, if it's a danger for somebody to be in that house,
You're going to get them out of the house?
absolutely. But again, that's in an emergency case. In any other thing that's involved in the Jonesboro Property Maintenance Code, which was again derived from the International Property Maintenance Code, we don't have a provision that says if there's a violation that everybody has to get
The
out.
house is unsafe. It doesn't make sense for someone to be in the house.
Right. Again, but that's not new. We've had, again, that's part of our condemnation process that we've had.
What's the answer to my question? They won't be removed from the house?
If a property is
Not if, but they will be. Is that what it is?
no, what I'm trying to answer your question. If the property is a danger and it's a danger for people to be in there, then as existing ordinances that we have now, yes, the chief building official can close the structure and require people to be out.
In this code, there's a means of appeal, and a board of appeals must be established. An appeal other than imminent danger prevents the code official from pursuing compliance of the violation. In other words, if there's a violation and a citizen wants to appeal that violation, then everything stops right there until the appeal is heard. An appeal can be based on an incorrect interpretation, provisions of the code maybe do not apply, or the requirements may be met in another way. The code addresses membership of the board and notice of meetings. The Board of Appeals is required to consist of at least 3 qualified members. And a notice of the meeting, the appellant is entitled to a prompt hearing. This section has been amended, the stop work order, because I believe Jonesboro already has this in place. Chapter 2 of the International Property Maintenance Code has terms of definitions, as do all of the codes in the family of international codes. The terms that are defined are in alphabetical order, and they may be found in chapter after chapter, but the meaning remains the same as provided in Chapter 2, and it's applicable throughout the code. Chapter 3 are the general requirements, and we'll attempt to start on these. I don't know how far we'll get, but The purpose of inspecting the exterior property areas and equipment is to determine if the exterior environment meets the minimum code requirements. Interior properties are inspected for structural, rubbish, garbage, or pest elimination violations to determine if minimum standards are met. The consequences of not performing adequate inspections could result in deterioration, improper storage and disposal practices, inadequate property identification, such as addresses, improper ingress and egress for life safety. These are life safety issues. Lack of building security. The owner shall maintain the structure and exterior property except as otherwise provided in the code. An owner shall not occupy or allow another person to occupy a premises that is not sanitary and in safe condition. Dwelling occupants are responsible for keeping the part of the dwelling that they occupy and control in a clean, sanitary, and safe condition. Exterior areas should be maintained clean and free from rubbish and garbage. Accumulation of garbage and rubbish should always be addressed, specifically car parts, tires, and construction materials. These seem typical standards that everyone wants in their neighborhoods and cities, but the code helps to spell these provisions out. Grading and drainage. Improperly graded properties create health and safety hazards. And standing water or nuisance water over sidewalks that create moss and they become slippery and could cause falls. I know in Texas we battle with West Nile, and so standing water is a huge issue. Deteriorated walking surfaces present a hazard to the public. The code official should ensure that the following are usable and kept in proper repair: sidewalks, walkways, driveways, and parking surfaces. And I'm not talking about cracked sidewalks, but broken sidewalks that will heave as the earth heaves and buckle, and walkways and driveways. And they're hazardous to elderly, to children, to everyone. This section has been stricken, and I believe you already have this in your ordinance. Do you want to speak about it?
We've had a grass ordinance for years, and so it was redundant to leave it in. So that part was stricken from the ordinance.
Yeah, and most jurisdictions have some sort of verbiage like this in this code or the zoning ordinance. Rodent harborage. Rodents carry diseases and must be exterminated by an approved process. Another nuisance is exhaust fence. And again, these are not all the comprehensive provisions of the code. These are just some of the slides that we picked out. I do know that some of in commercial properties, the exhaust vents, whether they're from an industrial nature, if they're type 1 or type 2 grease hoods, they do attract rats and roaches, and they're very noisy and they produce odors and they create health and safety problems. Accessory structures should be maintained in the same manner as the primary structure. This includes detached garages, fences, walls, sheds. And I believe you have a local provision already on the books for motor vehicles. Now, this is specifically addressing commercial properties, paint booths that are typically a special occupancy, and they can be hazardous, and they have to be in they have to be built in a very controlled manner. Defacement of property. Intentional damage, mutilation, defacement of a property or graffiti is a violation of the code. It's the responsibility of the owner to restore surfaces to an approved state, and that's on private property or public property. Swimming pools, spas, and hot tubs. They must be maintained clean and in a sanitary condition. And that's, again, to prevent stagnant water and the breeding of mosquito larvae. And I believe you have a local provision, the IRC.
Right. We have, again, ours We have an ordinance existing that deals with swimming pool enclosures, and then the standing water provision deals with unkept swimming pools.
And I'm not sure about Arkansas, but I know Texas led the nation last year in swimming pool drownings, and that's not good. So swimming pool barriers are very important. And what constitutes a swimming pool is anything 24 inches deep. Required to have a 48-inch barrier or fence. And the gates and doors must meet specific requirements. And spas and hot tubs have to have an approved safety cover to prevent drowning. Exterior structure unsafe conditions. This provides for exterior conditions that render a structure unsafe. Repair or replacement must be in compliance with the International Building Code or the International Existing Building Code. Examples of unsafe exterior building conditions include a structurally unsound chimney, wall anchorage that's not capable of resisting loads, improperly anchored awnings or signs, structurally unsound stairs, and roofs that let in rain. This particular section was amended, and I believe it's for your local jurisdiction. So this section you won't find in your code?
No, actually, we have the protective treatments. The reason it's highlighted is with the peeling, flaking, and chipping paint. One of the things that we did here was we created a threshold of anything over 25% of the painted surface would have to be peeling, chipping, or flaking for us to take any action.
Gotcha. Okay.
We also did away with the requirement to eliminate rust stains.
Yes. Okay. So all siding and masonry joint windows and doors should be weather tight. You would think that's intuitive, but they need to be weather tight to maintain your cooling and your heating. Wood structures require protective treatment to prevent rotting and maybe termites. Metal surfaces subject to rust or corrosion must be treated with a rust inhibitor. Premises identification is very important for emergency services if you ever have to call 911. So the fire department or an ambulance can identify where they're going. Street numbers must be displayed in Arabic numerals or alphabet letters. They must be at least 4 inches in height and a ½ inch wide, so they're visible from the street. Yes.
One of the things we had, or we still have, a premises identification ordinance. We left this in there. However, we changed it to 3-inch letters because that's what our existing ordinance said.
And that, some jurisdictions, their setbacks are closer than others. And some jurisdictions, you have a 50-foot front yard setback. So whatever that setback is, it allows visibility for your emergency services. So 3 inches works for your city. Structural members must be sound and capable of supporting all the dead and live loads imposed upon them. This particular section was amended out, but it's, I'm sure, found in a different area of your code, but the foundation must safely support the entire structure. The code official should note any signs of stress, sagging, shifting, or movement, as well as damage of deterioration to structural members. Exterior walls should be free from holes, breaks, and loose or rotting materials, and should be weatherproofed or coated. Small leaks can cause thousands of dollars in damage to plaster, rafters, joists. Roof drainage systems are required to divert water runoff away from the structure. Runoff should also be diverted away from neighboring properties, public sidewalks, alleys, and streets to prevent possible nuisance problems. Routine maintenance is required for fire escapes, signs, marquees, metal awnings, and other similar items. Exterior structures, stairways, decks, porches, and balconies, chimneys and towers, handrails and guards, windows, skylights, and door frames. These are all very important exterior structures that code officials look at in many jurisdictions just on a drive-by basis, not necessarily a complaint basis. And if they notice anything. These are important safeguards. They can cause life safety issues. Windows without hold open hardware, frequently propped open with sticks or other objects. They can fall and cause injury or death to children or adults. In the event of a fire, the occupants are at risk if the windows cannot be opened easily. A lot of times they're painted shut, and if there's a fire, there's no emergency escape. Insect screens was removed from your ordinance. Exterior structure, doors, you have to have an exterior door. It has to be lockable. Basement hatchways, guards for basements, these are all addressed in section 304.15 through 17. Doors and windows shall have locking devices to provide security. All locks shall be openable from the inside without the use of a key or special knowledge or effort. And that's typical in your residential code and your building code. It's not just in this code. The interior structure must be maintained so that the occupants' health and safety are not adversely affected. So unsafe conditions, what are those? This section provides for interior conditions that renders a structure unsafe. The conditions require repair or replacement in compliance with the IBC or the IEBC. Here are some examples of interior building conditions. Structural members that cannot support nominal loads, improperly anchored floors, structurally unsound stairs or handrails. Some repair defects include undersized structural members that over time sag, crack, or even collapse, inadequately fastened structural members that loosen and separate from each other, poor quality construction materials, and poorly installed structural members. And this is another section that was deleted. Did you want to address it?
It was, the interior surfaces. A big reason we did away with that was what does a hole in the sheetrock do? I mean, it wasn't one of those what we felt was a life safety issue, and peeling, chipping paint on the inside of a house, again, was not that life safety issue that we felt like we needed to be part of this, so it was eliminated.
Stairs and walking surfaces. Every interior stair must be kept in sound condition and good repair. A lot of accidents happen on stairways. Handrails and guards must be firmly fastened and capable of supporting the normally imposed loads. Interior doors, all hardware must be present and in good condition and must operate properly.
And on the interior doors, Cindy, we did change that slightly in that if there's not a door there in a doorway, again, that wasn't a concern for us. What we changed it to read was that every interior door shall fit reasonably well within its frame and shall be capable of being opened as designed. Again, we don't care if there's an interior door or not. What we care about is if there is one, that people can't be trapped inside.
Component serviceability, structural components and equipment, conditions that render components unsafe. This section of the code will address that. Soil conditions, concrete, aluminum, masonry, steel. These should be repaired or replaced in compliance with the building code or existing building code. Handrails should be on all stairs, interior or exterior, with more than 4 risers. Handrails should be placed 30 to 42 inches from tread or finished floor, and this is typical again through the residential and building codes. Handrails and guardrails are very important to prevent falls, whether it doesn't matter what age you are, but I know my mom is 75 and she doesn't go anywhere if there's not a handrail. It's difficult for her to go up 2 stairs. Stairs, landings, balconies, porches, decks, and ramps, or other walking surfaces that are greater than 30 inches above grade require a guardrail. Guards shall not be less than 30 inches above the finished floor. And that's to prevent a child from falling over and the intermediate rails are 4 inches to prevent a child from falling through. Improper storage and disposal of rubbish and garbage can threaten the health and safety of the public. Improper rubbish and garbage disposal can result in insect and rodent infestation, blocked means of egress, they can block doors and windows, and disease. Cause of improper disposal, it could be careless occupants, it could be insufficient containers or infrequent rubbish pickup. And I believe you may want to.
Right. The section on the accumulation of rubbish and garbage was kept, with the exception of, because the city provides those containers and picks them up, that part was eliminated as far as the container goes. And there's another section that one. The International Building Code says that before you put your unoperable refrigerator outside, you have to take the doors off. We have an ordinance that says you can't store non-functioning appliances outside anyway, so we eliminated that.
And disposal of garbage, it tells you that garbage is the animal and vegetable wastes created from the preparation and consumption of food. Occupants are responsible for properly disposing of their garbage wastes. And again, the garbage facilities, the owners and dwelling units must supply one of the following, and the City of Jonesboro supplies approved containers with tight-fitting lids. All structures must be kept free from insect and rodent infestations. That rat didn't scare me this time. I didn't know he moved the last time. But I do like this. This could be a good handout because it can be confusing on who is responsible for spraying for fleas or exterminating for mice. And this pretty much outlines that a structure that's unoccupied or prior to occupation, it's the owner's responsibility. Common areas, the owner. Single-family dwellings, it's the occupant. Infestations caused by defects in the structure, well, that's the owner's responsibility. It's not necessarily the occupant. If there are termites, it's not the occupant's fault. Infestation in common areas, if you have multiple occupancy, is going to be the owner. And those caused by the occupant in the occupant's private unit are the occupant and the owner typically. And that's all I have. So I will have a seat and we'll open it up to questions and answers for the panel. Thank you.
Okay, as she said, this is the time for our questions and answers, and we do want to give you a chance to ask questions. We don't want to get into a debate over the provisions, but we are welcome to ask questions and get information. I do need to ask you to raise your hand if you have a question, and let me come over there and bring you the microphone. We've got a handheld mic here. We're broadcasting live and recording on Channel 24, so it's necessary to be able to pick up your voice so that the home audience can hear as well. So if you have a question now, raise your hand and I'll come to you. Yes.
Two quick ones that tied together. The Jonesboro Code, do the Jonesboro Code we have to change with the international standards? If you change this every 3 years, do we have to go back and amend the city's code?
And no. Again, when code adoption takes place, it's the choice of the jurisdiction to choose to adopt a code or not, okay, and choose to update a code or not update. Okay.
And when you do update it, who does it apply to in the city if we don't update our code? Is that nobody?
No, if the city chooses not to update the International Property Maintenance Code, it's the choice of the city. In other construction codes, it can make a difference for things like insurance and things like that, yes. But for the Property Maintenance Code, I'm not aware of that being an insurance issue.
Okay, thank you. On the screens, do we not require screening in? No?
No, actually, we have never required insect screens. One of the reasons that we eliminated it from this code was kind of following along with HUD guidelines. HUD had that as a requirement for HUD rentals, and they did away with it as well. Really kind of a history of it, back before people had air conditioning, everybody had their windows open. If you go through Jonesboro now in the middle of summer, you're not going to find many people with their window open. So.
My name is Jim Hargis, and I'm interested in the practical aspects of the international code. Who gets paid? How do you know how many houses to which this applies? How many apartments to which this applies? And what the change in values of the affected properties in Jonesboro might be? Have you made any speculations along those lines?
I'm not sure I quite understand all of your question.
Okay, I don't see how you can. I mean, what does it take to enforce this code to have an impact on the city and make it better?
Sure.
So how many houses are you expecting to have in this? How could you implement this by observing those houses, apartments, ownership, and what do you expect will be the change in the value of the properties that this impacts in Jonesboro in terms of providing housing to needy people?
Okay. First of all, I would suspect this is going to be like many of our other ordinances that we have. And I can only, again, look at our past performance to expect future results. And what we see right now is we only deal with about 10 to 15% of the population on any ordinance that we have now, because the vast majority of people, once they know what the requirements are, they meet them themselves. So it never involves any other, for instance, grass is one. Everybody knows that you're supposed to cut your grass. Well, if everybody in Jonesboro decided we're not cutting our grass until somebody from the city tells us to, there's no way that we could possibly get to where we need to get to. However, most people know what the ordinance says and they do it themselves. So I suspect that the vast majority of homes in Jonesboro, number one, already meet this code. And if they don't, I think that we'll see a large compliance. I already know several people in town that know this code is in place, and they're already doing things now to make the necessary improvements before the city ever has to deal with it. Now, as far as future speculation of home values, I would not be qualified to speculate. I think there was some other part of that question that I forgot.
Well, I think it might affect the value of the property. It seems like that a lot of the things were for the owner to do, and if a person is renting on a long-term contract, would they be treated as an owner? Or would that, in other words, a person, an owner, if they didn't have people that were careful, might be impossible to have more than, half a dozen places because, of all of the trash and the upkeep and things that people have to do. Some people will be affected more than others.
I think you're right. I think some people will be affected more than others. As far as rental property goes, I know of one local landlord that we have that owns quite a few houses in Jonesboro, and I don't think this code is going to touch him one bit. And I don't know how many houses he owns to date, but there's quite a few of them.
I think I saw in print somewhere that 44% of people they rent, they don't own property. That's almost and one thing that you didn't talk about that the current.
Roy, let him have a mic so we can hear, please. Sir? Roy, let you have a mic, Jim, so we can hear you, please.
One thing that bothers me so much, we had a very good sidewalk building campaign here. It came from the courts, but it lasted over several years, and we got some very good sidewalks, and that helps people, and it was a good contract, and we brag about sidewalks sometimes. But there are certain people who come into properties and they park their car straddle the sidewalk and leave it there 7 days a week. And I thought it was for the police to enforce it. So I asked for the police. Then eventually someone said it was code enforcement that enforces it. And we have them that just are there every day. And so nobody does anything. It's against the current code right now. We have a code for that, but nobody does anything.
Well, I know of one specific incident. It is, to answer your question, that is a law enforcement responsibility to address that issue. I can tell you from having been on the street for years, it was one that we deal with so much other stuff. That was one that it was hard to get, honestly, find the time to actually address that.
So we'll do more things and have
No,
more time.
and so I can tell you what I have told our code guys that work for me now is that if they see it, address it with a warning, and if it continues, then we will send an officer over there to address it. And I know one specifically. I drive by a couple times a day to see if that vehicle's still there.
How come it stays there then? You've been doing it for several times a day for how long? I'm sorry.
Sorry, but that's the way
I'm over my time. I'm sorry. I'm concerned about the practical aspects of it, making Jonesboro a more beautiful place. I know that's important, and I want to participate in that.
Okay, thank you.
We were told over and over again, first, there must be a complaint before any kind of enforcement action would occur, before an inspection would occur, and so forth. Can you tell me what page or paragraph in this document says there must first be a complaint? And second, on this disclosure form, that when you send it to an owner or an occupant, why is the party that issued the complaint not named?
Okay, two answers to that. First of all, what we deal with is this is the new ordinance. Okay, it doesn't specifically say exactly how everything is going to be enforced. For instance, the speed limit outside is posted. There's a law that says the speed limit outside, I think, is 25 miles an hour. And if a car drives by at 60, they're in violation. Now, what the law doesn't say is that a police officer will run radar or he's going to be out there clocking. It gives some discretion to the jurisdiction. So the mayor decided early on that this would be enforced on a complaint basis. So again, you're not going to find that in the law. That has to do with administration. To answer your question, the second part of your question was what again?
The name of the party that issued the complaint.
Right. So that question was asked in the earlier session. Yes, we will allow people to make an anonymous complaint, and here's why. Many people are afraid of retaliation or bullying tactics from, and we have seen it, where somebody makes a complaint about their neighbor, and the next day their window gets busted out or trash gets dumped on their yard. I took a complaint earlier today from a lady who complained to the city about animals, about dogs, and the next day she had dog feces dumped on her yard. So people are afraid to make a complaint and put their name because they're afraid of retaliation. Now, that being said, if somebody makes a complaint and says, okay, the only way you can view that complaint is from my backyard, they're going to have to be named because they have to give us permission to come on their backyard to see the complaint.
Okay, so you're saying the code does not require that there be a complaint?
No, I'm saying
The code does not require that there be a
no.
complaint?
The code does not require it. That
All
was
right.
again. That was an administrative decision that the mayor made.
That's going to be the policy.
Yes.
Okay, 104.1, however, says that deputy code officials shall have the authority to render interpretations and adopt policies and procedures. So can a deputy code official decide, I'm not going to require a complaint, that's just a policy, and I'm going to change the policy?
No, that would be an administrative decision that again we will take the directive from the mayor.
That's not what your code says. I draw your attention to 104.1.
I'm aware of it. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My question's for Lieutenant Todd. My name is Vernon Neal. I'm a property owner here in Jonesboro. I am not a landlord, and I'm not a realtor. Todd, my question for you is, first, I have a couple, but I'll make it quick. One is due notice. 107.1 says, whenever the code official determines that there has been a violation of this code or has grounds to believe that a violation has occurred, notice shall be given in the manner prescribed in section 107.2, 107.3, which we covered the lady covered in her presentation, more or less says after receipt, in writing, the property address, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. After receipt, do you think that that would mean that due notice has been served?
I know where you're going with it.
Exactly.
And actually, I had some discussion with our city attorney about that, and that's probably something that we'll look at changing. From a legal standpoint, that might be due notice for the purposes of requiring a repair. For the purpose of every additional day being another violation, it would not be. That would be after a conviction in district court were to occur.
Okay, for the rest of the people, you are right where I'm headed. Because 106.4 says violation penalties. Any person who shall violate a provision of this code or fail to comply therein or with any of the requirements thereof shall be prosecuted within the limits provided by state or local laws each day. A violation continues after due notice has been served. That's exactly why I asked about the due notice. Then the violation shall be deemed as a separate offense. So theoretically, the first offense is $100 not to exceed $500. The second offense, or day two, we'll say Tuesday, would then be $250, not more than $750. And then Wednesday, I'm facing a fine, a possible fine, not less than $750, and for my third offense, and for each subsequent day. If that is not part of the ordinance, shouldn't this how you're going to enforce the ordinance? Shouldn't that be a part of 106.1 or 4?
And our city attorney couldn't be here, so let me address that the best I can. We have other ordinances that have that requirement in it, that additional days constitute a separate offense. And the intent of that and the way it is meant to function is that if I issue a violation order to you and you have 180 days or 65 days or however many days to make the repair and you don't do it, and then you're then cited to court and the judge finds you guilty or you plead guilty or there's a trial and you're found guilty, the judge can say, okay, you're fined $100 or $500 for this violation, and you're going to have to get it fixed. And if it's not fixed in 30 days, I'm going to have you back into my court. 30 days later, he says, okay, you're going to be fined $100 per day until it's done. And the intent of that is that if the repair to a house costs $1,500, but I can get to court and just only be charged $100 fine, well, it's cheaper just to pay the fine and move on than to fix the repair.
Okay, and with all due respect then, shouldn't the intent of how it's going to be interpreted be part of the ordinance?
Yes.
Shouldn't that be written? Wouldn't it be easy to just write the intent? Because things change, administrations change.
Sure, and again,
inspectors change. Shouldn't that intent be part of the ordinance?
I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay.
I've spoken to the city attorney. That, again, that's the same language that we have had in our other ordinances. If you can find one person that's been charged any amount per day until something's been fixed, I would say you have a great argument. But again, I've told people that the best predictor of future behavior is past performance, and you won't find anybody that a judge has said, I'm going to fine you $100 per day until it's done.
Okay.
So yes, do I think that we need to go in and make that part more clear? Absolutely.
Okay, and you may accuse me of being a doubting Thomas here, but let's talk about the complaint driven.
Okay.
Complaint driven gentleman asked the question. As I understand it then, an anonymous complaint can be filed.
Yes.
So I can be in Blytheville, I can be in New York City and file a complaint. Is that correct?
In theory, yes.
In theory.
Yes.
I mean, how do you know where I'm at? Could I be a self-appointed code inspector who wants to drive the city looking for addresses of people who I don't think comply and file complaints?
Yes, you could.
Don't you think you should research that or rethink that possibly a little bit? Doesn't it leave a lot of open for anonymous just doesn't seem right.
Well, and again, if the violation is able to be viewed from the public, then yeah, we will accept an anonymous complaint.
Okay.
Because
Is-
again, the fear of, especially in today's environment, my wife will, if I give somebody a dirty look for the way they drive, my wife gets on to me because she believes everybody in another car's got a gun and they're going to shoot at me. People are afraid to make complaints because they're afraid they're going to be bullied or retribution is going to be taken against them. And so, again, we want to protect that. If you had to say, I mean, I don't care. I'll stand up and say, hey, my name's Todd Nelson, and I've got a complaint about this. But there are people that are scared about it. I mean, genuinely concerned about it. And so we want to give them the opportunity to, again, live in a better place and not fear that retaliation.
I'll accept that. And is our current system that we have, is it complaint driven?
No, we can, right now that we can do self-initiated activity.
So by knowledge of a person, my son, who appeared before the city council, who spoke against the ordinance being adopted, the very next morning, he spoke on, I believe, a Tuesday night, the very next morning by 10:30, he had a citation because he spoke before the city council.
No.
Before.
And
You're expecting me to accept the same people that enforce our current ordinance? Just trust me.
Your son
I'm a doubting Thomas.
Your son came to my office the next day. We sat down and talked about it, and I showed him where a complaint had been filed. There was a complaint. It was not self-initiated.
On his property. You need to check.
Does your son have a motorcycle?
Yes, he does.
Okay, yeah.
36 Park.
Yeah, there was.
It was not a complaint on his property.
Okay, right. There was a complaint, again, you are right. There was a complaint about a block away from his house. The officer, the code officer that went by, and what I've told them is if you address a complaint here, look the neighborhood, and he actually, he issued a warning citation, yes.
Okay, this question is for Cindy. I was looking at your website, the ICC website, and trying to determine which cities were incorporating or adopting the International Property Maintenance Code. And I noticed that in Texas, and aren't you from Texas?
I'm from Texas.
Yeah, in Texas, a lot of the major cities had not adopted the International Property Maintenance Code. Cities like Dallas, Flower Mound, Houston, San Antonio, Fort Worth, Grapevine, Garland, McAllen, Lubbock, Tyler, all of these cities had not adopted the International Property Maintenance Code. I wondered why that was, and is it because they don't need it?
No, actually, a lot of them have, but cities are self-reporting. In other words, whenever they adopt codes or renew their memberships with ICC, they go to the ICC website and put their own information in as to which codes they've currently adopted. It's only as updated as the cities give the information. So whichever category you saw, but I can assure you there are many jurisdictions in Texas that have adopted the International Property Maintenance Code. In fact, last week I went to Longview. Right now, most of the jurisdictions are looking at adopting the 2015 codes because at a state level, certain codes are adopted. So they're looking at adopting the 2015, and already there are probably 12 jurisdictions that have adopted the International Property Maintenance Code.
Well, is Dallas, Texas using the international?
They haven't adopted their codes yet. All of them are in the process of the first quarter of adopting the 2015. So we'll see within a few months. But I do know Capel in the North Central Texas district, they've adopted it. They've had it for several years. I just went to another jurisdiction last week that's the same size as this city, and they're looking at adopting it too. It's near Tyler.
And if I could address this as well, Cindy's absolutely correct in everything she said, but you also have jurisdictions, large ones, particularly like Dallas, maybe Fort Worth, or any of the larger ones, that before the International Property Maintenance Code was created, they already had on the books their own idea of and ordinances of how property maintenance codes are done, or property maintenance,
right.
or like Jonesboro
Right.
already has for certain things like condemnation and things like that. So with them already having ordinances, they may not have adopted it.
Right, that's what I was
So the property maintenance code again is a model code for jurisdictions to choose, if they choose to adopt it, and then make it fit their needs, which is what Jonesboro is attempting to do by making the amendments that they're making.
December 1st council meeting, when our city attorney spoke, she gave a very detailed explanation of the fine procedure. And if you will take the time and go listen to her, she did a fabulous job, and she will explain exactly from start to finish how that is. And that is on our city's website, the December 1st council meeting.
Question for your organization. What kinds of processes are in effect to monitor the consequences of the code, and what have you seen over time?
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating that?
Okay. I'm wondering what kinds of measures are in effect to monitor the consequences of the code of clients that you work with, and what have you typically seen as these are implemented, both positive and negative?
I can't speak specifically to the property maintenance code, but every code change proposal that's put forward with ICC has to have a cost analysis attached to it to justify the code change proposal. That's something that was put in place back with the 2015 codes, I'm sorry. So there is a cost analysis with every code change proposal about what it will cost industry to people to use that code proposal, and then weigh that with public safety. It's part of the review process. Was there a second part of the question?
I was wondering what are typical patterns that you start to see in monitoring that as you're taking stock.
I'm sorry,
of
but
what these
I'm not
changes are.
qualified to answer that question because that's not part of it. And it's a good question. It's something I could look into, but I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with an answer to that.
Okay.
What patterns you're seeing or anything like that. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
We've got time for one or two more.
One of the things that I'm very concerned about, it says the provisions of this code shall apply to all existing residential and non-residential structures and all existing premises, yada, yada, yada. This doesn't appear to grandfather in any buildings. Those that are 30 years, 40 years, 50 years older, there's no way it's financially feasible to retrofit them to come up to modern day codes. And I have a specific example. Just recently, very dear friend of mine had to repair a water heater in their water heater closet. The plumber told them, your house is not up to code. It will not be up to the new code. You do not have a drain in your water heater closet. Now, they've lived in the house. They actually built it about 30 years ago. They've lived in there, never one problem. But now they've been told that the house will not be up to code, and if they try to sell it, they will either have to deal with this situation or get the buyers to deal with it. The problem, it's on a concrete slab. And when you have to drill into a concrete slab and then connect to piping to connect to a drain, they've been told that's going to be thousands of dollars. See, to me, that is a grandfathering issue for this particular code that I think needs to be rethought.
Each case will be dealt with individually. If it is an older home or something, if it's not feasible, then of course we wouldn't never force anyone to bring it up to code. I think the drain issue you're talking about is probably a pop-off or even a pan drain that can be ran through the walls. It doesn't necessarily have to go through the concrete. But I understand your concern. But each case will be dealt with individually on the grandfathering in.
That doesn't
Could I add to it, please?
Just a minute. That's another one of those issues that each one will be dealt with differently, because that sets it up for prejudicial prosecution of situations. That it's apparent that does. I'm not saying it would, and I'm not criticizing you. I mean, you and Mr. Nelson, I'm sure are wonderful people, but like the gentleman said before, y'all won't always be in charge of this situation. And I like my laws, because that's what this is, a law, to be written specifically so that I don't have to guess as to who's going to let this slide and who's going to force me to do something.
Can I add to this, please? And that is that in the other codes that are in existence that are adopted in Arkansas, plumbing specifically, since it's a sanitary code, there's even on existing structures, when a plumber goes in to work on it, through the plumbing code, they have minimum requirements out of that's instituted by the Department of Health and Hospitals for the state of Arkansas. So I'm not saying that that's what this situation is, but it could be. If I could keep just stay on track for just a minute. The other thing is that so the water heater was changed out in this structure. So did the inspections were permits pulled and inspections? Then and that's a significant thing. So.
About the situation because she was hysterical, thinking that they would have to do thousands of dollars worth of work in order to correct the situation. They wanted to sell their house, or et cetera. Because he said he could also, and this is what is going to create a problem, he could also make a complaint on that side himself. He was not, I might add, he was concerned about the situation.
I think my point here is that the plumber is required to get a permit to do the work that he was doing on that particular project and do the inspections. That's my point to it.
I don't know
So.
about the permit. I didn't ask about that.
Just real quickly, one of the things that Mark mentioned earlier is that this is a maintenance code. So it's not saying that your older home has to be maintained to current building standards. It has to be maintained to the standards that were in place when it was built.
That's correct.
So does that make sense? Now, if you have to do,
That's not how it's written.
yeah, but now if you have to do repairs and he'll tell you, or you do renovations, then parts of it you may have to bring up to current building codes, but that's a building code issue. That's not a property maintenance code issue.
If I could make one statement to add to this, and it may help you out, and that is that the technical provisions that are in the property maintenance code are not the same technical provisions that are in construction for new homes. It's two different requirements. This is minimum health, safety, and welfare requirements, whereas new construction may be up a level because they. Okay, thank you.
There's also an exception clause in there that talks about existing mechanical things being in working condition. So if it's older than the working condition after the repair, is it acceptable? Is that not how I read that?
Well, the city of Jonesboro, we do have the existing building code, and it does quote what I mentioned to her, that if feasible, it will be brought up to code. If it's not, we've adopted the existing building code, and it is designed for older homes and structures.
Just to read you the passage from this code that you're quoting. Mechanical appliances, all mechanical appliances, fireplaces, solid fuel burning appliances, cooking appliances, and water heating appliances, which would be water heaters, shall be properly installed and maintained in a safe working condition and shall be capable of performing the intended function. That's the extent that this code covers water heaters. That's the full extent.
Section of the code that I was referring to.
But this is the technical section that section is requiring you to enforce and to install by.
Hi, Todd. I've had several people tell me, well, if this is the minimum, what is the maximum standards?
I'd be glad to. So these are minimum codes, but believe it or not, there's actually jurisdictions. There's actually jurisdictions that adopt these model codes and add more requirements to them to make it, different building requirements. They may have for earthquake, they may have extra structural requirements that they require. For hurricane protection, they may add extra hurricane protection.
Okay.
For property maintenance, they may add a lot more to what this basic property maintenance code is. I mean, sure, jurisdictions do sometimes adopt stronger codes. Absolutely.
I've never seen anything tear a city apart as much as this property maintenance code's been doing. I can't talk to people I used to talk to anymore. They won't talk to me anymore. Landlords are scared to death. Homeowners are scared to death. And I know some people will giggle and laugh, but people run around taking pictures of things, calling TV stations. It's tearing the town apart. I just don't think divide the city like this. You are going to have some more meetings where people that work till 6 o'clock can't come to a meeting. because we need that, because the regular person can't get here. They're working right now. So
you're not a regular person?
no, I'm not. I'm highly weird, according to some people.
Okay, our guests have another meeting at 7 o'clock, I believe, so we're going to wrap this up, and we appreciate all of you taking time to come out this evening, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.